Hello everyone. Today I'll be talking about the works which I have been doing in my center, this Yuva Satellite Center, which comes as part of Indian Space Research Organization. My center works on satellite. We basically, based on the need of our country, we design the satellite. The need can be put in these categories which I have listed here. First one is the Earth observation satellites, where we have to look at the oceans or the land or the weather. So those part comes in that part of the classification. The second part comes in the communication satellites, where the GSAT missions, where geosynchronous satellites comes in that category. The basic fundamental use of this is one thing which we use in our day-to-day life is DTH service. And the next one is the navigation satellite, which will be the replacement of GPS system of the US system. The next one is the science exploration, in which Astrosat, Chandrayaan, Mars mission, Aditya mission, all these things are for the future science innovations. These satellites will be put into use. And the last one is the experimental mission, where with the other centers we work on the missions as a collaborative things. Coming to the contribution from my side to the Chandrayaan 3, I'll be giving a glimpse idea of what is my team was working and also the other teams which have contributed from our center. First thing is why we have chosen the moon. The reason for choosing the moon is, I'll list one by one, which is the closest celestial body to our Earth. If you have to explore Mars or Venus or any mission, first we have to sustain on the moon. Then, because it will give an idea of how much technologies has to be developed and whether the technology is working or not. Because the shortest time between the moon will be 10 days, 5 days to go and 5 days to come. And if you have a higher launch vehicles, we can do it in 3 plus 3 days. If there is any problem in the technologies, then we can able to sort it out. Suppose if you are going to Mars, the return time itself will take 3 plus and 3 plus years. So those kind of scenarios, failure was not to be expected. So that's the reason moon should be a fundamental base for the future exploration. Second is the lower gravity. The lower gravity means because in the moon the gravity is 1/6 of our Earth. So whatever conventional technology what we have here, like aerobraking or the atmosphere, we don't have it over there. So we have to use engines for doing the design, or for decelerating the design or accelerating the design. The last point will be the finding of water by the Chandrayaan-1 spacecraft, because that gives an idea that we have to explore it, and this is closest to celestial body which will be in the future. And where to go to the moon? The US and other space agencies have already explored the equatorial part of the moon, but the Chandrayaan-1, which gave an idea there is a water finding at the South Pole, that was a starting point for the Chandrayaan-2 spacecraft to be selected at the South Pole of the mission. This graph shows some of the landing site which has been already been done by the other space agencies. The site which has been chosen for the Chandrayaan-2 as well as Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft was near to the South Pole. There was a slight difference between the Chandrayaan-2 and Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft, because we got a much higher data for Chandrayaan-3 rather than Chandrayaan-2. In Chandrayaan-2, since we don't have the very good camera during that mission, we used US LRO data for choosing the site. Once the Chandrayaan-2 was made, the CH2 orbiter was having a very fine camera. Based on that, the Chandrayaan-3 site was being updated. So that was a major contribution of Chandrayaan-2 orbiter for the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft mission. Then how to go to the moon? As we all know, we have the satellites here, and in order to reach the moon, it has to be injected from and it has to be escaped, it has to be lifted off at a particular height from the Earth's surface. So we have to use the launch vehicles. This is a typical launch vehicle which is it has solid boosters, because solid boosters will be used at the starting stage of the launch vehicle. Then we will be using the I think there is a liquid engine which will be at the bottom, and the third stage will be the cryogenic engine. The cryogenic engine which will be littered almost at the top of the thing, and at a particular point in time, the spacecraft will be ejected. That point in time will be decided based on the geometry in which the Earth and Moon will be coming for the Chandrayaan-3 landing site. So typically the launch vehicle will be giving an orbit of 180 into 36,000 kilometers. It looks like a ellipse because the perigee at which the spacecraft will be injected, which will be 180. Because of the kinetic energy, the maximum potential energy will be rising, which will be going to 36,000 kilometers. So since we are already in that orbit, then only our satellite center job will start, because after the launch vehicle has injected the spacecraft into the elliptical parking orbit at a particular geometry, our job is to take it to the moon. So the conventional way of our country is by raising apogee until it reaches the moon. The dotted circle which you can see here is the moon's orbit around the Earth, which is almost 4 lakhs kilometers from the Earth center. So at every point in time, based on the alignment of the moon, the orbit has to be risen, and it is it has been selected based on the path. For example, as the moon is coming towards its apogee, we should make sure the apogee is nothing but the highest point of the orbit which will be capturing the moon. As soon as it enters into the moon's orbit, it will be in a hyperbolic orbit. It means if you don't capture the moon, it will again come back to the Earth, a sphere of influence itself. The reason is the moon itself is within the SOI of Earth. Once it has reached the moon, we have to fire the engines, which is the liquid engine in the propulsion module. That will make sure your orbit will make it as a circular orbit, because we are attempting for the soft landing. So most of the energy which we are capturing in the moon has to be killed with the propulsion module itself. So we will be circularizing. We had circularized the orbit around the moon almost 150 into 150 kilometers using the propulsion module which is shown here. And the lander module was sitting above the propulsion module. This is a typical design from our team. I'll be playing this. So that was elliptical parking orbit. Then we are doing the engines from the propulsion module. As the orbit of the elliptical parking orbit keeps on increasing. The reason of doing that is we will have flexibility in the design. If there is any contingencies or if there is any problem in the spacecraft, we can able to correct it. And this design has been made at a particular point in time in this 42 days in such a way that when we are trying to do the last maneuver, which is nothing but your trans-lunar injection maneuver, so that the spacecraft will be directly going to the moon. During these missions, at every orbit, if there is an error which is happening because of the engine, because none of the systems are perfect, anyway error will be in attitude and engine will be happening. So those things will be corrected as the maneuver was happening. Here you can see when it was reaching the moon, because of its moon's effect itself, the spacecraft itself was getting inserted into the moon, and the red is the firing, which makes that it doesn't come back to the Earth surface. So that was a very critical maneuver in one of the from the liquid propulsion module. And this is the conventional strategy we used, so that we are making sure the kinetic energy which is in the spacecraft when we are capturing the moon, we will reduce as much as possible from the propulsion module itself. When we entered the moon, it was almost 2.7 km per second. Then because of the engine firing, we made it almost to 1.6 km per second based on the propulsion module propellant itself. That one what I showed was a simulation video. This was the actual video that was captured by the propulsion module camera when it was when we are doing the LOI maneuver, which is the lunar orbit insertion maneuver. Here you can see so much craters because we were capturing almost close to the south pole of the moon. Here you can see the shadows are coming in because the sun geometry at which when we are capturing the spacecraft with respect to moon was on the other side. So at the initial part, the part of the moon was visible, then it was going into the darker side. Now once we made orbit around the moon, now the objective is to land on the moon. Since the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft was having two modules, one is lander module and one more was the propulsion module. First we have to make it a separation. The lowest orbit at which the power descent was, target was 30 km. The reason of choosing 30 km was, conventionally the power descent starts at 15 to 30 km. But for Chandrayaan-3 we also had a backup site which comes almost 3 days later. Suppose if you are missing the prime site on the landing day, then because of the moon's effect on the orbit itself, it was reducing to 18 km. So we made sure that without any extra propellant expenditure from the lander module, we made sure at least the orbit perigee is almost 18 km even when we go to the backup site. And the apogee of the orbit, as I said, it was 125 km based on because the orbital track has to come. For example, if you are landing on the site, the lunar day, which our chairman said it was almost 14 days the sun will be there and 14 days night will be there. And we have to make sure the orbit comes on the sunrise day, because then only we will have the next 12 to 13 days for doing the experiments, because again after that 14 days the temperature will go as low as minus 200 to minus 360 degree. So that's the reason the track should come exactly on the sunrise day of the landing site that we have chosen. So how to land on the moon? We are already have an orbit, and how to land now. Now the question is, we have to navigate. It's like I can say it's like a car, and you have to go from the particular point to another particular point. So we have to navigate the lander craft. Typically like your GPS. So I am already, as I told, we have already reached an orbit which is almost 30 into 130 km. So now we have to go. In a typical GPS, how we do? We know the current location, we know where to go. So if you put, it will choose a route. It will give an initial route how it should go. But as we are going through the route, what happens? There can be error in the route, or we can miss a turn. Then automatically the Google Map update itself to show a new site to go to the same point where we wanted to go. This is like a fundamental phenomena which also will be which has been implemented in the Chandrayaan-3 lander craft. We have navigation, guidance and control. Navigation is nothing but where we are at, to know the position in the space with respect to some orbital reference frame. Guidance is the one where we have to go and from which point we have to go. So that comes as a guidance. Control is the part where it will take us, it's like a steering wheel which will take us through the route to the final destination. So all these three problems, we call it as a GNC problem, which is a part of my specialization. Since there is no GPS in moon, how to do the navigation in moon? So that's where our antenna systems all across our as well as in Bangalore, as well as in the other countries we are using. On the landing day, that was one of the crucial difference between the Chandrayaan-2 and Chandrayaan-3, because even though we have a support from JPL, we made sure the landing happens in our Bangalore network, which was ISTRAT. Yeah, so with the communication will be always from the station to the spacecraft until the power descent start. As the power descent start, it's a fully automated sequence, but until the power descent start, we have to feed the lander exact position where we are at. And the subsequent part, guidance and control, which has been already been tested by so much simulations and a hardware test, that will take care from the starting point to the final point, because we know already the final point also, the nominal final point. So that is how the design has been made. These are the sensors from the various centers for doing this mission we got. This is a typical lander. We have a liquid throttable engine from our LPSC team, which is the first development of our ISRO, which has 800 Newton. Conventionally, we had a 440 Newton thrusters, which has a typical ISP of 315 meter per second. And also the unique speciality of this engine is a throttable engine. It means I can demand the thrust from maximum value to a minimum value of 45 to 50%, which is required for such landing missions. So because for this landing mission, this engine has been developed. And the next is the reaction control system, which is always there in any spacecraft missions, because in order to control the attitude, the small thrusters has to fire. Coming to the velocity sensor, in order to predict how fast I'm going to reach the site, I need the absolute measurement in the system. Somebody can ask, I have already loaded the system with the initial knowledge, but why do have these kind of systems on the way to growth? The reason is, because once we in the Google Map, what we do, even though before we start from our home or office, we used to see what is the route. But as we are going, what happens, there will be an error, there can be a traffic signal, we can miss the turn. So an update has to come, what kind of errors are going to happen, and based on that errors, we should update our trajectory to the same site. Altitude sensor is the one which is going to give how much far away from the surface. The hazard camera is, so after we reach the site, so even though we have loaded the map based on our Chandrayaan-2 orbiter craft, that because of the errors, inherent errors which are happened in the system, the site can be little bit off. But also in order to get a final clearance from the site where we are going to land, we have to use this camera. So this is a typical power descent trajectory design. Basically, we are moving at a very high speed with respect to the moon. So when we are going to stop it, we have to push. Suppose if somebody is we have to stop somebody who is coming at a very high speed. We have to push the vehicle on the opposite direction. So at the starting point of the power descent, the force from the engine should be almost opposite to the direction of velocity. And when we are landing, the only force which we are going to have is, if the velocity is 0, it will be the gravity. So the force should be opposite to your gravity. And these 2 points has to be connected by a trajectory, which we call it in optimal control theory as a 2-point boundary value problem. So which will give what is your position and velocity, which has to be there during the course of time, and that has to be achieved in on real time. And after you reach there, that's where your horizontal the hazard camera which will come into picture. Even though we are near the site, suppose after reaching there, because of the error, there is a boulder or a crater over there, that could be a slight shift and we have to land at a different point. Because of this, those cameras has to be inbuilt. But even though these facilities and all these contingencies has been built in the lander, but it was a textbook landing for our ISRO Chandrayaan-3 mission. This is the overall trajectory profile which I have worked on, and my team also worked on it. One is the one which is starting from your Earth, how to reach the moon and how to go to the orbit where the sunrise is there, and how to make sure that the separation between the lander as well as the propulsion module happens within the stations available in the network. And once it is separated, what are the points which has to be achieved? These points are nothing but we call it as a wave point in space, because in space we have to know where we are going and what point and what velocity we are going. So those are called as a wave points, and that will be make sure the spacecraft will be taking to the landing site what we are thinking. And even though these are all mathematical simulations, our URSC center as well as with the help of other centers, it has to be tested on ground, because once we are going there, all these things will happen in real time, because the delay and the decision making can't be done from the stations available in the Earth because of the very short duration. These are some of the tests that has been carried out, which will test all the GNCs which was developed by the other teams at the LPSC center. And finally is the lander leg test that also will be done in the URSC center from our mechanisms team, which will test the lander leg, how much it can handle. The improvement that has been done with respect to Chandrayaan-2 and Chandrayaan-3 is almost 2 times, because Chandrayaan-2 limitation was 1 meter per second, but Chandrayaan-3, the limitation of the lander leg which can sustain was almost 3 meter per second. So these are the additional margins that has been built in Chandrayaan-3 to have a safe landing. This is a landing video which I think you would have watched during the August 23rd. As you can see, as the power descent started, the images which we are seeing on the moons, which was nearly to the nadir looking point. As we are coming closer and closer, you can see the spacecraft velocity will keep on reducing, and you can see so many boulders are there. So the one more important point is pinpoint landing, because already the landing site has been chosen such that the sunrise is over there, and even if you are suppose there is a deviation in the system, what will happen is the site will be can be dark, or it can be boulders, and it can craters. Even though the system has been designed for handling all those situations, we have to make sure that it should go to the nominal point, and every time, even though we have a backup point, only the primary design which has been implemented, and it has been executed for the Chandrayaan-3. Here you can see there is a slight horizontal shift and all it's happening because that's what hovering, all those things were happening. Coming after landing, also there was an important moment which is nothing but your rover deployment from the lander craft, because if the design is like that, the rover is mounted within your lander craft, because until it lands the rover can't come out, and as soon as it lands also you should make sure the sun is on the right side of it. Here you can see the shadow comes on the left side because we have to make sure the landing happens in this way, because as the 14 days goes, the moon goes from this side and it will go to the opposite side, and it will come, and it will never come to the rover side of deployment. That's the reason there is no solar panel over there. And also you can see as the rover is opening up, the solar panel is exactly to the nadir of the sun, so it also gets a power, because until 42 days it was inside the lander. So that was one of the key moments to decide how the trajectory should go at the sunrise time of the landing site, that has been decided. Now we have seen the simulation result. This was the real onboard camera video, which was also available in the public forum. Here, as you can see, the deployment of the rover is happening, and the rover is slowly coming out. And also you can see the solar panel, which is also opened, which will get, as soon as it comes out, the sun is on the other side to illuminate the rover, and it was moving forward. You can see the shadow, it is on the other side. All these were part of the trajectory design, because we know where the sun will be, where the site will be, and how the trajectory should go to that site was designed. Coming to the next experiment is the propulsion model. This was a key thing for the future missions, because when we are trying to return our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi was told that 2040 we should land on the moon, we should also bring them safely. So since our propulsion model was already there, we have to, since there was a propellant was there, I mean the marginal propellant was there, we tried to make sure that how it is possible to bring back to the Earth. So we made 3 maneuvers so that it will be coming to the Earth's surface. And you can see that there was a flybys of the moon 3 times. And also you can see the orbit which was made with respect to the Earth center. This gives us software capability as well as idea how to bring back the spacecraft, and also it gives us how much delta V, how much propellant has to be there for the future missions. So this was an experimental mission, and this was not planned before the Chandrayaan-3. After we landed, since there was a propellant was there in the propulsion module, we thought we will do this exercise so that it will give us confidence in the upcoming missions. This is also one of the missions where my team is working on. I will be showing in behalf of them, which is Aditya mission trajectory. Here also the conventional method of rising your apogee to a certain extent so that it goes towards looking to the moon. It actually doesn't go closer to the moon, but what it happens is you will get a field of view which will be shown here. It is called as a halo orbit. The reason is it will be put in a particular region where your sun's pull and the Earth's pull is getting nullified. So it remains there. So that's the idea of it. And if you put there, what happens is it has a continuous looking over the sun without any interruptions. So this was the trajectory design done from my other team. So which is implemented in Lagrangian mission. And in January, this will be inserted into the halo orbit, and it has typically 6 months lifetime of the spacecraft. Coming to the future mission, which our teams are working, is the Venus orbiter mission. The Venus orbiter mission, the objective is to have the aerobraking technology. See, in Moon we don't have the atmosphere, so we used our liquid propulsion engine for reducing your orbital speed. But Venus is not like that. We have an atmosphere, so these are all a development project. So we call it as a technology demonstration project. So where you can see that Venus spacecraft is going and the Venus is coming, because Venus is closer to the sun than the Earth. And as soon as it goes closer, it should be getting captured, similar to our Chandrayaan-3 or MOM mission. So when it goes closer to the moon, it will be again captured based on the liquid propulsion engine. But the problem is, after you capture, you don't have to spend so much of propellant for making an orbit around to reduce the orbit. We can use, if the technology of the materials or everything is developed, then we can make sure it goes through, every pass goes through the atmosphere, so that the orbit size keeps on reducing to make it a circular orbit, instead of spending our propellant which are carried, and those can be used for the payload of the Venus spacecraft. So this was one of the projects, our team is also working on it. And this concludes my presentation. This is one of the images I am thrilled to see on that day, because after so much of work, this photograph shows that it has successfully landed and no one can question us on the South Pole. Yeah.
So looking at the number of turns it will have to go while slowing down, that means that much amount of time it will also have to aerobrake through the atmosphere. So the amount of heat shield that will be lost in that process and the material that will be required to make the heat shield, do we have the technology, or like you said, if the materials are developed by then, only then it could be implemented?
Right now we don't have the technology. We are developing it. That's why we call it as a technology demonstration project. As you rightly told, it will go through so many processes through the atmosphere, and your satellite system should be able to handle all this number of passes, and your thermal, they are the critical parameters which has to be looked at.
In terms of duration of time, how much time it will total spend in this process of passing through the atmosphere, and the heat shield should last that much duration?
It actually depends on your orbit at which you are capturing the Venus orbit. For this kind of simulations, what I have showed, it will take 4 to 6 months to reduce the orbit, but it purely depends on the surface area of your spacecraft and the orbit which you are capturing into the Venus.
Right. Out of that 4 to 6 months, how much area is through the atmosphere? How much time duration is through the atmosphere?
Those kind of details are right now not in the picture, because we are talking about right now only as a point mass model in the system. Based on this is the starting point. For example, if it is 6 months, if it is taking, if somebody has to reduce this time or increase the time, we have to put a surface area perpendicular to your entry point, and that will reduce your time. So those are the things which will be derived from this design.
Okay, thank you so much.